Hello, everyone. Welcome to our very, very first United by Rice podcast. And I'm here with my co-host, Ben Lee, who I'm very excited to introduce. Go for it, Ben.
Yeah, Junko, it's nice to see you. It's actually Easter, even though I don't know when people will listen to this. And as you reminded me today, it's also 420. So
420.
hopefully everybody out there got to celebrate appropriately and had a good Easter Sunday and a 420. But yes, I'm very excited to be here and we're finally doing it, Junko.
Yeah, so I don't know, you kind of gave birth to this idea. Do you want to talk about what we envision in episode 1, which might be different by episode 10? But let's just see where we're starting from.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the podcast, right? So you and I have known each other for a pretty short amount of time, actually. But, we met and started talking about this idea. And, more and more as I thought about it, I was like, this could be a good podcast. We should talk about these topics. So first and foremost, my name's Ben Lee, and I am a writer on a website called Awards Focus. But I also have now started writing for my own site, United by Rice, as well as some other outlets that are out there. And about maybe 6 months ago, I realized a couple things, right? One is I've had this opportunity to interview a lot of Asian American talent. And so often I only get to use their written word and some of the excerpts, and it just doesn't come across as exciting or emotional. Sometimes they're talking about things that you could tell have a real deep meaning to people, but it doesn't really play out in written words. I've been thinking, well, what do I do with these interview clips? Do I put them on YouTube or should maybe start a podcast? But I think more importantly, and I think why maybe you're also excited to do this, is the other thing I've realized over the last several months is we get to meet so many people in this space, this small little community of, whether it's Asian American or let's just call it Asian talent and creators that are trying to get their stories out there, that there really is a need, I think, to give everyone a voice and give them an outlet to talk about the things that they're making, talk about the things that they're trying to get made. And I learn so much and get so inspired by the people that I meet that I thought, well, look at the political environment. It's time to do something about this and make sure that we're not. I think everybody thinks in the Asian American diaspora, things have gotten better. There's more roles for Asian actors, et cetera, but it could all be fleeting, right? And, I'm excited that you're going to be doing this with me.
Yeah, I'm too.
So I'll turn the question back to you, right? Just thinking about this podcast. I don't know if you've ever done anything like this before, but I'd love kind of your take on the type of things that we're going to talk about and what excited you about this opportunity.
Yeah. I don't even know if I said my name at the beginning. Well, my name is Junko Goda.
You did.
About that. I did. I don't remember. Just in case. But yeah, I think what drew me to the podcast was some of it was timing. These days, yeah, I've been living in LA for the last 20 years, working in the industry, but I've found myself really keeping a roof over my head through Japanese English interpreting in the industry. I came to LA 20 years ago because I'm an actor, so there's that. Yeah. And yeah, some of it was just timing. I usually, especially during COVID, I was doing a lot of translating. And that just kind of naturally sunsetted as I was coming into 2025. And I was like, all right, well, I got some time. And yeah, just to fill that space with more creativity. I mean, translation to some extent is creative, but not as creative for me as like talking to people and kind of really picking their brains. So, yeah, and I also kind of like suck at social media, but I do want to let people know like personally what I've been up to. And would be wonderful, like I said, 20 years in LA, coming up with a whole bunch of AAPI actors, like starting in theater, like working on Friends as indies or bigger productions and stuff like that. I have so many people who just haven't had the opportunity to be on something like this and be able to spread their voices. So yeah. I would love to, have those people on the podcast as well. So
that's exciting. Yeah, that's exciting. So it's early days for everybody, right? But to give you a preview of what's coming, so many of the talent agents or the actors themselves, when I've been negotiating with the publicists about, well, let's have so-and-so on, they'll actually say, oh, I know Junko, right? I was in theater with them or theaters. So I think it's great what you're thinking about. We will fulfill. We're going to have a lot of your friends on for sure, or former, castmates or production mates, etc. But without question, we'll go further outside of your circle too. And you talked about translation, so maybe it's a good story of how we met. We met probably a year-ish ago, almost
exactly
a
a
year ago.
year. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the Shogun, I think it was press event or FYC
Yep.
event.
At the DGA, and they made, oh yeah. And it was specifically FX putting it on. So was it a screen the pilot? Was that right?
They did on the big screen. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And the DGA has nice sound. Not as good as the Academy Museum, but their sound system's pretty good. So so there was a full cast Q&A. I was interpreting for Tadanobu Asano, and then I ended up interpreting for him for like the rest of award season, and also Moeka Hoshi. And so that's how you and I ended up seeing each other a lot.
Yeah.
Especially once awards started too.
And actually, I guess maybe one question about that. Did you at that time, because that was probably one of the first events, have any idea what was coming in terms of how successful they were going to be and how many awards they were going to win, including Tado and Mocha?
Yeah. I think minimally they would have at least won for like production design, minimally. So I was able to attend the premiere, which was held at the Academy Museum. And at that point, I've always felt that Shogun came in at a really interesting timing because, Game of Thrones is sunsetting, and there is nothing out there that has such a high level of production value to replace it. And I was like, oh, Shogun's definitely there. So, as far as like costume design, production design, hair, makeup, I was like, oh, definitely that, Shogun would get, just from watching the pilot. So, but yeah, I think it got a little unexpected for everyone. And especially for Tadanobu's, his Golden Globe, because the Emmys were like, okay, I forgot who won for supporting actor in a drama series. Anyway, I'm like, I forgot, but it was it was an English language show, and I'm like, okay, not a surprise. And so the Globes were a huge surprise. Yeah, because we were kind of walking in there being like, okay, well, I'll see you after the because the actors all go into a dining area thingamajiggy at the hotel. So it's only the actors and the creators in there. There's no publicists, there's no managers, unless they're a +1 guest. So I was like, okay, I'm like, see you after the show. And I was just chilling out until like he won. And so what happens with interpreters, just to backstage, is that I got pulled like a couple, like 4 awards before his award, and I'm just standing back there on standby, and totally wasn't expecting it. I was freaking out with the stage manager. I'm like, where do I go?
Yeah.
So that was a good moment.
Yeah, for sure. Someday, maybe in the future, or maybe when Shogun Season 2 starts to be something to talk about, we'll play a clip, because I don't think I've ever shown it to you, but at the Screen Actors Guild Awards, I was doing virtual press room. So I'm sitting exactly where I am now. I wasn't, in a suit or anything at the event. And it's very awkward, because for me, it looked like the camera must have been 100 feet away from the cast.
Yeah.
And they're all standing there. I don't know if they see me or hear me or what's going on, but I just remember asking my question and actually hearing your voice translate it for them. So
I think
we'll have to play that clip
afterwards.
someday. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good, that actually, the more I think about it, it's such an interesting role that you played, because the show itself is so much about translation, right?
Yeah.
Not only as a viewer, you had the Japanese and Portuguese translation happening at the same time, but really Mariko's character is kind of playing with her role as a translator, which is obviously, saying different things than she's hearing.
Right.
Again, these will be really good future discussions for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so besides getting into this podcast, episode 1, what else have you been up to?
Yeah. What's something actually, well, did I finish? Yeah, I finished the recent season of Black Mirror, so I'm caught up.
Ah,
And then I finished The Resident. That's on Netflix.
the
That's fun.
resident or the
Oh wait,
residents?
Residents.
Yeah.
Yes. The murder mystery one.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. With
Residents. Yes.
Camellia Cobb, right?
Yeah. I heard
Or
of that.
Cordelia.
Oh no,
Cordelia Cobb.
Cordelia Cobb.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a
Yeah.
very fun show. Yep.
Yeah. So that's like so fun. Like you don't have to. It's a little of a juxtaposition because it's set in the White House.
Yes.
So I don't know. Maybe a lot of people are sick and tired of the concept of the White House, but like just the set they built and all that. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And they don't get overly political, so they keep it fun and lighthearted. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. You can always throw in bird watching if it gets too political.
Yeah. Well, by the way, we've gotten, however many minutes into this recording, and we haven't mentioned who our guest is for this episode. So
yes.
we'll probably start talking about that. So just for listeners and now and in the future, sometimes it will be Junko and me. Sometimes it might be Junko or me and some other guest hosts that we'll have from time to time. But we really do hope to have guests on pretty frequently. And as we both mentioned, we're both very excited to give a platform for different creators to talk to. And, I think to be truthful, we want to empower people that don't always get a lot of opportunities to, whether it's podcast or have articles written about them, get press. But occasionally we'll also have some big names too. And so I was very excited and thrilled when Jung-jae, player 456 from Squid Games, both season 1 and 2, and, a legend in Korea, agreed to be on our show. So
good work, Ben.
so the last 20 minutes or so, we will play the interview with Jung-jae. He was very fun to talk to. I was so excited to talk to him. I actually did it while I was on vacation in Hawaii. I was super nervous that my hotel internet was going to be awful and this wasn't going to work, but luckily everything worked out fine. Now, it's been a while since Squid Games 2. He's starting really his press run for the Emmys that come, of course, later in the summertime. But if you recall, he actually won an Emmy. He was the first Korean male to win an Emmy for Squid Games. It's been so long that when I went from season 1 to season 2, it took me a while to figure out, okay, what's this going to be? I remember season 1 ended. He had some type of pink hair or red hair, but what's going to happen?
And even the beginning of season 2, you're still wondering what's going to happen.
Yes.
Until you get into like the latter half of like episode 2 to 3, then you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
Like,
there's no games, right?
Yeah. You're like, what's going on?
So, yeah. Well, so before we play the interview, I'd love to kind of banter a little bit about, number one, like what does Squid Game mean to you and kind of your pop culture mind share, right? Like, is this a show that you were excited to see season 2, and are you looking forward to season 3?
Right. I think as like creatives, the question always has to be, how are you going to do better than your season 1? And understanding that the bar is very, very high for those Squid Game folks, like on a world level, right? So there's definitely like, how are you going to top season 1? A
little bit like Shogun, actually, right?
Yeah.
Like when Shogun 2 comes around, especially, and actually kind of similar when you've killed off a good majority of the cast.
Yeah, your main core. Yeah. But Shogun still has history to lean on. So, but Squid Game is just like, don't know what's going to happen. For season 2, which I really appreciated, because when we all were introduced to Squid Game season 1, we definitely didn't know what was going to happen. So we were like, okay, it's a game. Yeah, and then we went on the roller coaster ride. So season 2, it's not as much of a roller coaster ride because we're so familiar with the world. But it was, I guess it kind of like reminds me more of like, I might have to even pull out like Old Boy, just that steadiness of number 456, like getting to his end goal, because we don't know his end goal, like what he's exactly trying to get to until like episode 5 or something like that. So there's this very, yeah, I would almost have to like kick it back to Old Boy, or is it just like a very specific Korean style? Because I
Mhm.
probably have not consumed as much Korean drama nor movies, but I do wonder it's just a very unrelenting steadiness that he carries that show for season 2. So, season 1, we're seeing everything through his eyes, which was great. And now season 2, we know him really well, but we are not seeing the world through his eyes any longer. So it's really interesting. The whole setup of season 2 and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in many ways, like season one, was a whirlwind, right? So I think the recognition for him was deserved, but also came with the fact that the show was new and just a phenomenon. I think probably still the most watched show ever on Netflix. And his role in season one came with like some natural emotional baggage, right? He was
Yeah.
I can't remember if he was a gambler, but down on his luck for sure.
Right.
It was affecting his ability to be able to see his daughter from, that his ex-wife was more or less, trying to keep away from him. So he was really desperate. You get that storyline. Season 2, you don't really get to use that, right? To build that emotional crutch. So
Yep.
what did they do, and how does he kind of, what energy does he draw from? And so when you listen to the interview, you'll see I ask him a question about how did he kind of put himself in the mindset to play the role this time around after he's won the game, but of course is still traumatized from the events of season 1, which in the show is probably a lot more recent than the actual gap between seasons 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
But he does a phenomenal job. There's some funny scenes, I think, in season 2. So this is the thing about, to your point, Korean shows that maybe I don't watch enough of to really kind of know the typical tone. But
Yeah.
there always seems to be this just hugely intense drama followed by a lot of levity and almost silliness on top of it, right? And
Yeah.
again, it's something that not just he does well, but the whole show does well. I do think, and another question I had asked him about, and I'm blanking on the actor's name. I know he's like worldly famous in Korea, but
Yeah.
the gentleman that plays the recruiter.
Oh, yes.
Those first couple episodes, I think it might be the second episode where, they confront each other,
Right.
is some of the most exhilarating TV I've seen this year. And
Yeah.
that actor in particular just kind of, he's
Yeah.
so schemy,
Yeah. He
so
and
good in that role.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty much a type of cat and mouse game between Lee Jung-jae's character and the recruiter.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah.
Now, I was just reading in a Deadline or something that Korean content is the number 2 like most watched content on Netflix globally.
Yeah.
And you tiny little Korea and massive, United States producing content. So it's pretty amazing. Beats out India and every other country that has well-known like studio work going on.
Yeah.
This, I feel like Squid Game in my head was the start of all that. I know, certainly there had been really popular Korean movies, good movies, certainly Parasite, all of those came just before Squid Game.
Yep.
But those to me were more moments where Korean dramas and Korean filmmakers were being accepted and seen by a more global audience. But they weren't still like the pop culture phenomenon that Squid Game is. So I don't know what you think about all that, because maybe K-pop pushed this whole movement too.
I was gonna bring up BTS because what was the timing of Squid Game season 1? I'm trying to remember. I'm sure.
Good question.
Out on the
Good
internet.
question.
Yeah, that's a Google.
I'm gonna look that up while you're talking here.
Yeah. So, because I mean, I'm not ARMY. And for those who are not acquainted with the BTS lingo, ARMY means you're a super fan, and all the BTS ARMY people like talk to each other and help each other out and give each other little gifts, kind of like the Swifties do.
I'm glad you clarified that, because when you said you're not ARMY, I was like, where's she going with this? I'm not sure what that means.
I'm glad I backed up and let me clarify that. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of lingo, and Yeah, there's very specific terminology when it comes to BTS, and people are very, very obsessed. But I remember listening to them by like spring of 2020 when we were in like the middle of COVID. And I think that really, I think it was that combination of BTS and then Squid Game. There was just, I mean, we were all stuck, we were all stuck and quarantined. And entertainment was really, really high in demand. So the combination, because I think at one point, like BTS, oh, eventually, I think by 2021, they were like in LA, there's like the local news, which is KTLA, which is I think everyone has their favorites, but like I don't know, I think it's a pretty big deal to be on that as a guest. But like BTS was on that. And then just their transitioning from, oh, you have cool music videos and stuff like that to making appearances in the US. And obviously their crazy, crazy sold out tours and stuff like that. So I would think it's the that timing of BTS and Squid Games and COVID, and also Squid Games is season 1. I wouldn't say season 2, but season 1 was fundamentally very accessible because because the jumping off point was always the games, and the games never had to, if you notice, and this kind of pulls from, I guess, escape room games, but the good ones, they don't rely on a lot of just alphabets. It's more symbols and numbers, so that like anyone who doesn't know the English language can still play these games. Kind of similar to Squid Games, other than the, red light, green light, like she's saying, well, it's kind of obvious when she turns her head. So there's less, linguistic cues. You could even probably, when they're playing the games, you can literally just mute the sound and you can figure out what's going on. So it's very, very accessible. And because that draws you in, and then they started spinning the relationships, that's when it gets really interesting. And that's when you need the subtitles. But you're already in deep, so you're just like, well, I'm going to have to read the subtitles and figure out what the relationships are. And, when they started having to make teams, and then kind of like Survivor, you're making enemies and allies, that stuff. And you're already, by that point, they already got, the show's already gotten you.
Yeah. So I think you're right. Like, I guess I tried to maybe avoid the BTS frenzy purposefully, so I wasn't aware of how massive it had gotten. But I just looked up, so Squid Game 1 released in September 2021. So I think you're right. Like
2021.
kind of these couple events plus COVID really, really drove it. And it's crazy now. I mean, it's amazing how many people I meet who are traveling to Korea, find Korean men. From a women perspective, they're looking for Korean men. And these are not things, again, these are topics that we'll talk about, I'm sure, in the future, but these are not things that I grew up with, right? Where I would ever dream that this would be the case. So it's been a very interesting last few years for sure. And in many ways is why we're doing this podcast, right?
Yeah.
There's enough content.
There's enough.
And enough people that want to continue to make Asian content, Asian American content that it can drive a narrative. Well, do you have a favorite Korean? Somehow we pivoted all the way to Koreans, which I guess is appropriate since we've got Lee Jung-jae. But do you have a favorite piece of Korean pop culture?
Wait, oh no, that's not pop. It's not pop culture.
We can go wider. We can go wider than pop
Excellent.
culture.
I'm so excited to report. I went to a Korean spa in Korea. That's the only thing. So, okay. So, as I said, I live in LA, which has Koreatown, which is the largest population of Koreans outside of the country of Korea. So, my friend and I, we always go to the Korean spa. And it's, I'm assuming it's up to par with people coming in from Korea. So, when I was recently in Japan, I decided to take a flight. It was Tokyo to Incheon to LA flight. And the Korean government is super smart, and they pretty much make everyone have a very long layover. And instead, they have all these packages and a special temporary visa where you could do like a 1-hour tour package or
Wait, was this the trip you just went on too? Like,
there's the one I just
came
went
back
on.
a week ago or so? Yeah.
And there are all these packages, but I had done my research, and there's a Korean spa in both Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. So, like...
In the airport.
In the airport, yeah. And so I had a 6-hour layover, which meant I had more than enough time to figure figure it out, that I actually technically had to technically leave the airport, like leave immigration. So I got my passport stamped. I'm like, ooh, I'm technically in Korea. And I just went and found this spa that I think just opened this year. And I was like, it's not exactly, but like it is what I expected it to be. So I'm very excited that I get to experience fairly authentic K-spa in LA. But yeah, it was nice. And it was just a nice way to break up the flights, and it was an evening flight, like 9 p.m. So I was all like spot out, and then I can just get on the plane, kind of flow.
Yeah, so amazing. As you know, I'm up in San Francisco or in the Bay Area, and I come down to LA pretty frequently. And I actually learned very recently, I've never been to a Korean spa, but I learned very recently as I was doing some, hotel research, because sometimes I'm there for like less than 24 hours.
Oh, yeah. Then you do K-spa.
Well, and that's what I learned, that people actually go there and like sleep there. They don't get a hotel.
Oh, yeah. Totally makes sense.
Amazing.
In my heyday, when I was doing a lot more translating, I would take my laptop, and I got laughed at by the parking attendant because she looked at my ticket and she's like, "You have been here for 8 hours?" I'm like, "Yes." And I got so much work done. So it would just be like, I'd work, you get tired, and you take a nap. You're tired, you want a break, you go sit in one of the rooms, because in K-spas, they have like different temperature, or no, not, yeah, different temperature, but also different theme, like jade or charcoal, or the super hot one, which not everyone has, but that's usually at like 120 or 130 degrees.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, which is, I like. And then, of course, you have like the cold stuff too. So, yeah, it's like, yeah, I would totally do the K-spa if it's less than 24 hours, because you can sleep there. I mean,
Well, I'm going to have to ask you which ones to go. When you see an Asian spa of any kind, you're always a little bit, I'm not sure what happens in there.
Nah. Until you go to K-spa, then your life will change.
Okay. All right.
It's very high tech.
Yeah. Well, very exciting. Anything else you want to chat about before we play the interview with Lee Jung-jae?
That's about it. I'm just excited that you interviewed Lee Jung-jae.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everybody enjoys this. So here we go. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our very first episode. It was a pleasure to do this with you, Junko. And again, we promise to every week or 2 weeks bring back additional fun guests like Lee Jung-jae. And I'd like to thank him and his publicist for allowing us to use his interview. It was very generous of him to do that on our very first podcast.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah. So again, we are United by Rice. Find us on Spotify, wherever our podcast plays. I think that will expand as we go. We're going to learn.
Yep.
We also have unitedbyrice.com, which you'll see already some articles, and we'll tend to put up articles for each of the interviews we do as well. So it's a little bit of dual coverage. And then coming up, we have a lot of exciting people coming on, at least exciting to me. We've got... Yeah. We've got a couple actors from the recently released The Wedding Banquet that will be coming on. And can't wait to not only talk to them, but share our thoughts on the film. It's a really big moment, I think, for not just AAPI films, but really like AAPI and the queer community. Again, we all know how under attack we are. So very excited to have them on. So I think podcast 2 and 3 will probably focus on The Wedding Banquet. Yeah. But we've got stars coming up from great shows like The Pit, if anybody has seen that, and other creators, all scheduled for the next few months. Again, I'm amazed at who's coming on, and can't wait to share that soon.
I also want to contribute by bringing in folks from the theater world, which don't get onto podcasts that often. So I'm really, really excited about that.
That's right. Well. So if you're an author, creator, our basic goal here is Asian American storytellers. But, that's a pretty wide band, but we don't mind going a little bit wider than that. Like anybody that's really supporting this cause.
Yeah. And also, don't discount yourself if you're like, well, I've only been in the States for 6 months or like 3 years. Like, don't discount yourself, reach out to us. Actually, our email, it's unitedbyrice@gmail.com, or one of us will be monitoring the Instagram messages. And our Instagram is united_by_rice. Or just follow Ben and I, and you can find United by Rice.
Yeah, yeah, very exciting. Well, it was a pleasure doing this, Junko. I hope you have
Yeah,
a wonderful week, and I'll talk to
fun
you again
times.
soon.
Yay! All right, see you later, Ben.
See ya. It's such an honor to meet you. So thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So Squid Game has obviously been such an enormous success, a global success. You know, you won an Emmy for it. Were you going to always come back for a second and third season, or was there so much added pressure that did it matter to you what the story was going to be, in terms of how your character evolved?
처음부터 시즌이 아니라 리미티드 시리즈라고 얘기를 하셨고, 그 다음에 마지막 촬영 때 혹은 이제 넷플릭스에서 이제 막 오픈했을 때에도 제가 한번 그 감독님에게 물어봤었거든요. 이게 시즌 이제 진짜 안 만드실 거냐 그랬더니 그때도 안 만드시겠다고 그러더라고요. 근데 이제 전 세계로 이제 막 너무 이제 많은 분들이 이제 좋아해 주시고 또 응원해 주시고 그러다 보니까 감독님이 와, 이렇게 사랑을 많이 받으면은 이 시즌을 다음 시즌을 안 만들면은 큰일 나겠다. 너무너무 아쉬워들 하시겠구나라고 해서 이제 그때부터 이제 막 다음 이야기를 막 생각하시고 이제 쓰신 걸로 제가 기억을 하고요. 그리고 저도 사실은 뭐 당연히 시나리오를 보고 내 기훈이 캐릭터가 어떻게 변해가는지 또 어떤 상황들을 기훈이가 맞이하는지를 보고 이제 다음 시즌을 이제 결정하는 것이 당연했는데, 그런데 이번에는 뭐 시나리오도 보지 않고 그냥 무조건 이제 하겠다라고 말씀드린 이유도 역시 저도 많은 전 세계인 분들에게 기훈이가 이제 사랑을 받아서 저도 그것에 대해서 보답 및 이제 감사의 표현으로 뭐 시나리오도 보지 않고 무조건 하겠다라고 말씀드렸죠.
Well, in the beginning, it wasn't supposed to be a multi-season show. I went into it understanding that it was going to be a limited series. And even I remember on the last day of filming, and also actually when the season one first was released on Netflix, I asked director Hwang, "Are you really not going to do a second season?" And I remember back then he said, "Absolutely not." However, as we all know, the show was so widely loved globally, and with the amount of love and passion and support from the fans, Director Hwang, he said he felt, and I think it was the same for all of us, that with this much love and support from the fans, we can't not do a next season. So I believe it was only after then that Director Hwang got to writing the next subsequent seasons. And for me as well, I mean, usually it would only be natural for me to wait and see the script and then decide whether I would be going into the second season or not. But this time around, it was an instant yes, no doubt about it, even before I read anything. And that also came from the same place for me as well, where because so many people around the world loved Gi-hun, I wanted to really repay that and also show my gratitude for all of the fans.
Excellent. Well, Gi-hun's character in season one is so much more grounded, almost passive, and very frustrating, in fact, early on in the season. Season two starts and he's very different. He's very active. He is vengeful. He even shows great leadership qualities as the season progresses. How did you have to prepare differently to play this role, both mentally and physically?
일단 정신적으로는 이제 기훈이 시즌 1에서 그런 악의적이고 처참한 게임장에서 나온 인물이기 때문에 성격적으로 아주 큰 변화가 있다라는 것은 당연하게 느껴졌고요. 그래서 그 게임을 반드시 멈춰야 되겠다라는 그런 강력한 어떤 그런 목적 의식이 있었다라고 생각하고 또 나름의 어떤 그런 복수심도 말씀하신 대로 있다라고 생각하고요. 그러면서 이 기훈이가 그 많은 그 받은 상금을 가지고 그렇게 풍요롭게 살고 있지 않다라는 그런 설정도 좋았습니다. 그것이 모든 사람들의 목숨값이라는 그 대사가 있는데 그렇기 때문에 그 돈을 쓸 수가 없었던 것이죠, 기훈이가. 그래서 그 게임을 만든 사람들을 잡아내고 그 게임을 파괴시키려고 하는 대로만 이제 돈을 쓰다 보니까 육체적으로도 굉장히 많이 이제 피폐해질 수밖에 없는 그런 기훈을 위해서 뭐 나름대로 외형적으로도 그냥 딱 보기에도 어떤 그런 기운에 거칠고 그런 피폐해진 어떤 그런 삶이 느껴지는 그런 외형을 갖고 싶어서 다이어트도 많이 하고 또 운동도 많이 해서 그래서 그런 어떤 그런 그냥 연기를 그닥 그렇게 많이 하지 않아도 기훈의 얼굴에서 바로 나타날 수 있는 그런 것을 찾으려고 노력을 많이 했습니다.
Go ahead. I apologize. I didn't have my camera on. So.
Mentally speaking, because Gi-hun leaves the game in the first season, that was extremely brutal and deadly. I felt that it was only inevitable for him to go through such a dramatic character change. And he is driven by almost an obsession to put an end to the game, to track those down. And like you said, he is indeed vengeful. And I also liked the setting, how he won this huge cash prize from the first season, but he wasn't able to use it. You know, he wasn't enjoying himself by spending the money because, as Ki-hun says in the show, it's blood money of all of those that had to die in the game. And so he would only be spending that money in his efforts to track those who created and are running the games down. And so he is in a very devastating state. And I wanted that to be conveyed just by looking at him. So physically as well, I went on a very strict diet, worked out a lot and sort of shaped up to be that kind of Ki-hun so that without much saying much or performing much, the audience can tell what kind of state Ki-hun is in just by looking at my face.
And there's one scene, I think it might be the second episode, that is super intense. It is with Gong Yu playing the recruiter, and it's the Russian roulette game that you play. And I cannot think of any scarier situation personally to be in. So how do you also mentally prepare as actors together with Gong Yu to play a scene like that?
공유 씨가 특별 출연이었기 때문에 공유 씨의 많은 시간을 뺏을 수는 없었고요. 하지만은 이제 공유 씨하고 감독님하고는 굉장히 많은 대화를 했었던 걸로 제가 들었습니다. 공유 씨하고 연기할 때 그 장면을 굉장히 많은 분들이 좋아해 주시고 또 저도 역시 마찬가지로 시나리오를 처음 받았을 때 그 씬이 굉장히 강렬했고 그다음에 더더구나 공유 씨가 연기를 하면서 훨씬 더 긴장감이 폭발하는 장면으로 이제 잘 이제 만들어졌는데 어, 어떻게 보면은 기훈의 입장에서는 앞으로 또 게임장을 만든 사람, 또 그 게임을 관리하는 사람을 또 이제 계속 만나게 될 거라고 이제 기대를 하고 이 공유란 그러니까 이 딱지맨을 이기지 못하면 혹은 딱지맨의 그 이 두뇌 싸움에서 지게 된다면 다음에 게임을 만든 사람을 그러니까 만날 수는 없다라는 어떤 그런 의지로 이 딱지맨을 오늘 어떻게 해서든지 내가 어, 이 머리 싸움에서 이겨야 된다라는 생각을 하게 됐는데 러시안 룰렛을 하자라고 하니까 목숨을 걸고 해야 되는 게임으로 이제 탁 바뀌게 되는 그런 설정이 너무 좋았고요. 그러면서 기훈이 그렇다면은 다른 선택을 할 수도 있는데도 불구하고 딱지맨이 하자라고 하는 제안을 받아들이면서 계속해서 그 딱지맨과의 대화를 계속 이어가는, 그러면서 그 대화 속에서 계속 긴장감이 이제 고조되는 그런 장면이 아주 훌륭하게 잘 찍힌 것 같아서 그날 촬영 다 끝나고도 공유하고 뭐 감독님하고 많은 스태프분들이 굉장히 흡족해하는 그런 장면이었었던 걸로 기억합니다.
Well, first of all, because it was Gong Yu's special appearance in the show, we didn't want to take too much time away from him. But I do remember hearing that he and director Hwang had many, many conversations about that scene. And I know that so many people really loved that scene. And I remember when I first read that particular scene in the script, I really felt like this was going to be an intense and explosive scene. And I think when we actually played the scene out, Gong Yu did an amazing job contributing to that explosiveness by his amazing performance. I think from Gi-hun's perspective, he is someone who is on the hunt for those who created the games and who are running the games. And so he is sitting across from this recruiter thinking that if he fails to win this guy, he won't get a chance to go to the higher ups. And so he goes into it thinking that I have to win this mind game. But then he ends up realizing that they're going to be playing Russian roulette, which is not a mind game, but really it's literally matter of life and death. So I liked how that little twist sort of must have shaken Ki-hun. But as the game goes on, he and the recruiter go on through this conversation that is extremely intense. And I feel like that level of tension was done in such a nice way that you can see that tension gradually heightening. And I think the scene was just done in an amazing way. I remember when we wrapped filming that day, both Gong Yu and director Hwang and everybody who worked on set, we were just all really satisfied with what we had created.
Yeah, it's absolutely an amazing scene. It is my favorite scene in the second season. One of the fascinating things about Squid Game is how deeply it resonated with Western audiences, with American audiences. And it's almost as if it were made about the US economy and political situation. Do you think that was a surprise? Or is it very similar in South Korea, the different themes around debt and inequality and desperation?
지금 뭐 여러 가지가 많이 비슷한 상황이다라고 생각하는 부분들이 제 전 세계 경제가 다 안 좋다 보니까 이제 뭐 경기가 안 좋아도 부자들은 뭐 그렇게 큰 타격이 없는 것 같아요. 하지만은 그렇지 않은 소득 수준의 국민들은 굉장히 갈수록 더 힘들어지고 있는 상황은 맞습니다. 하지만 이 상황이 과연 예전같이 뭐 경제 대공황이라고 해서 혹은 이제 무슨 뭐 금융 사태 뭐 이럴 때 같이 2, 3년 정도 잠깐 위기여서 2, 3년 정도만 지나가면은 다시 예전에 좋았던 시절로 회복되어 가는 건가라는 생각을 하게 되면은 그게 아니고 마치 어떤 강력한 시스템을 개발한 아주 스마트한 집단들이 계속해서 그런 어떤 그 부를 이룰 수 있는 방법으로 경제가 흘러가고 있는 게 아닌가 할 정도의 의심이 들 정도로 전 세계 여러 나라가 거의 비슷한 그런 상황을 겪고 있는 거다 보니까 그렇다 보니까 이런 사회 속에 살고 있는 우리 모두가 힘들어하는 부분들과 그다음에 그 힘든 상황 속에서 어렵고 가슴 아픈 사연들이 또 생기는 것이 전 세계적으로 다 비슷한 어떤 그런 상황들이 이렇게 일어나는 것 같다 보니까 더 공감들을 더 많이 하시는 것 같아요. 그리고 이제 이 오징어 게임에서 이야기하고자 하는 또 여러 주제 중에 하나가 아무리 돈이 없어도 우리는 인간이다. 그래서 우리를 그냥 경기장에서 말처럼 우리를 그냥 지켜보면서 그냥 너희들이 언제 쓰러지나를 바라보면서 게임같이 바라보지 말아라. 우리는 다 같이 도와야 되고 다 같이 위기를 극복해야 된다라는 그런 주제가 있는데 그 주제가 전 세계에 있는 많은 분들에게 어떤 공감을 얻지 않았나라는 생각을 하게 됩니다.
I think that, we all are going through something that's quite similar all around the world. Economies are suffering everywhere around the world. And even when your economy isn't just really bad, the rich, the haves, it doesn't really impact them as much. But obviously, as we all know, it's so much worse for those that don't have as much. And if we really think about what's happening around the world these days, it's not as if, during the times of the Great Depression or certain financial crises with a year attached to them where you could hope for things to return to the way they were before if you wait about 2 or 3 years. It really doesn't seem like that's going to happen, almost to the point where you cannot but wonder if the smart few that created this immense system that only benefits them is really moving everybody in a direction for the worse. That cannot be fixed. That's how difficult things are, I think, for so many people around the world, regardless of where you come from. And so I think those difficulties that we are all seeing and struggling in, they lead to all of these individual, very painful personal stories. And that is universal. And I think that's where the show reached so many people. And one of the themes that Squid Game wants to explore is that even without money or income or what we have, we are all human at the end of the day. We are not horses where it's okay for other people to watch what happens to you and just treat it as if it's some kind of game. We're human beings. We have to reach out to one another, help each other, and we must find a way out of all this. And I think that is what really resonates with the global audience.
Well, thank you so much. We are united by rice. So
예.
one fun question for you. After maybe a long, stressful day of shooting, what is your comfort rice dish to have for dinner?
굉장히 아주 중요한 질문을 하셨는데 제가 건 한 14개월 동안 굉장히 강력한 다이어트를 하게 됐는데 가장 그때마다 이제 막 먹고 싶고 그리고 가끔씩은 이제 조금씩 먹었었던 게 한국식 치킨하고 떡볶이입니다.
That's a very important question you just asked right there because I had to go on an extreme diet for over 14 months. The one thing, and the dishes that I would never let myself have, just except for very rare occasions, were Korean fried chicken and tteokbokki, stir-fried rice cakes.
Yeah, well, I love those too. Well, 감사합니다. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Wish you good luck. Okay. Thank you
Have
so
a good day.
much. Bye-bye.